Hey, my friends, how's it going? This is going to be a very, very fun episode. This is some of the crazy. I think it's like I'm reading fiction. They should call this legal fiction. This judge Engoron in New York and this $400 million judgment against Donald Trump and his crew and his team is unreal. Like what I am reading is just crazy. Now I've said it over and over, right, Zeke? I'm not a Donald Trump. I don't hate Donald Trump. I don't love Donald Trump. I'm just a lawyer here in the sense that I'm reading the law and I'm trying to figure out how this whole thing makes sense. And remember, this is a very big deal. We have here the state of New York with this judge basically financially crippling our former president under the guise of there was fraud being committed and there was very little transparency. I mean, that part, the transparency part, I got to get over it. We didn't see the trial. We didn't see any footage of it because the judge didn't allow it. And in addition to that, now finally, we have this judgment and I analyzed the judgment. I went through the case over and over and over and over again. All right. And I'm going to try to summarize this for you in about 20 minutes. It is a serious lack of reasonableness. It's going to be, I want to bet some, you know how you read about this, who it was, Jimmy Kimmel that said, okay, if Clarence Thomas leaves, I'll give him $1 million a year. Was it Jimmy? Wait, one of the HBO guys? Wait, yeah. Jimmy Fallon. What's the Kimmel's first name? Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He said something like, I'll give Clarence Thomas $1 million a year for the rest of his life if he resigns in the next 30 days. I'll do the same, except I don't have $1 million, but I'll bet anyone $20,000 and I'll freaking put my word on it that this is going to get reversed on appeal, either in whole part or in a major part, because this judge screwed up over and over in this case. And now I'm going to explain it to you. Okay. It was John Oliver. Oh, John Oliver. Thank you. Look at Mateo, like real-time fact checking. It was John Oliver that said, I'll pay $1 million. That's right. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel's the one that got sued by George Santos for doing those cameos. What happened was Jimmy Kimmel had cameos done by George Santos, the former congressman, and he lied about who he was so that he can get these cameos done, and then he posted it on his TV show. You know what I'm saying? And then George Santos sued him for lying. That's the congressman that said, I was a big shot volleyball player. My mom escaped the Holocaust. You know, my dad was a big time this, that. And you remember our buddy, the congressman? Anyway, so I got those two comedians mixed up. All right, so John Oliver, he said, I'll give $1 million a year to Clarence Thomas if he leaves the Supreme Court early. That is enforceable under certain circumstances. So if he puts it in writing and Clarence Thomas actually leaves based on that offer, it is enforceable. Same with me. If somebody wants to bet me 20 grand, this is going to get reversed. Now I'm going to explain why. So the gist of this $400 million case, it seriously goes like this. Donald Trump and his, business people and his sons, his accountants and everything, they borrowed a lot of money, tens and tens of millions of dollars from big banks like, Deutsche Bank and this Ladder Bank and, I'll go over all these other banks. So they borrowed a lot of money from these banks. The whole thing relies on this, okay? Everyone with me here for a second. The way they borrowed the money, the court is saying that they overinflated their assets. So when they went to Deutsche Bank, they said, oh, yeah, my property on 40 Wall Street, New York, is worth, $200 million. But really, the court is saying, it's worth a lot less. Mar-a-Lago, that is worth, $500 million. Oh, the court said that's worth less. And that's it. Things like that. And then when they borrowed that money, they got it at a lower interest rate because Donald Trump had all these assets, the valuation of those assets. Now the bank is going back and saying, wait a minute, your assets were not as high as you said they were. So instead of getting loans at 7%, you should have gotten those loans at 10%. And that difference is several millions of dollars. And now you're going to have to pay it back. Not to the bank, because the bank is not suing you. The bank is happy because you paid everything back to them. And they made a lot of money off you. So God forbid, you're not going to have to pay that the bank. You're going to have to pay the state of New York.
Huh?
Okay? The state of New York had nothing to do with this, but you're going to have to pay like the state of New York. Then, had you had to pay higher interest rates, you may have not done some of those deals. So you're going to have to pay back all the money you made from all those deals. Okay, not to the banks, because the banks were very happy with you. You paid them all back with interest. You did everything you agreed to do. And this judge is saying, this is what this judge is saying. The judge is saying that Donald Trump is a liar. He doesn't make that much money. The assets are not worth that much. Okay, so he penalizes him for the money that he's making. And he says he's making hundreds of millions of dollars. So on the one hand, the judge is saying that Donald Trump is not making any money and he's not, his assets are not worth that much. And then on the other hand, he's saying, well, he has to give up hundreds of millions of dollars because he said he made a lot of money when he didn't. But I'm saying he made a lot of money, so he has to give that back. And not to the people, not to the victims, because the victims are these big banks that did their due diligence and got all the money that they wanted. He's going to have to give it back to the state of New York. What does the state of New York have to do with this?
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right? Like, why didn't he, fund the freaking Red Cross or something? I don't know. The Red Cross should have gotten some. Joe Samo is not getting any of it. That's for sure. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to now kind of explain this and back it up in terms of this. So Donald Trump, in one big transaction here, he purchased this property in Washington, D.C. They called it the old post office, all right? So when he purchased the old post office, he got a good loan rate. And part of how, like I said, part of how he got that loan rate. So when you buy, like, let's say you buy, whatever, a house. Well, here, let's just say he bought this piece of property, right? In Washington, D.C. He renovated it. He changed it up, blah, blah, blah. And then he sold it and made a lot more money. He actually made a profit of $126 million when they sold that property because they renovated it. Now the judge is saying, well, when you purchase, oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. When you purchased it, if you gave the real valuations of what you had, the bank would have charged you, instead of 7%, they would have charged you 10%. And that difference is that you would have had to, that difference in interest would have been, let's say, the judge is saying $69 million. So let's write this down, $69 million. You have to pay back that interest because you should have been paying a higher interest rate. Does he have to give it back to the bank? No, because the bank is super happy. They're not suing him. He has to give it to the state of New York. Then he's saying, and in addition, if you would have had to pay all that extra interest, you probably wouldn't have been able to do this deal in the first place. And you wouldn't have made that $126 million. So you have to give back the $69 million in extra interest that you should have paid. And you have to pay back the $126 million because you wouldn't have done this whole deal. Do you see what I'm saying? And because this was a while ago, you have to, that's really annoying the way I'm saying and. Someone can show me? I look at Zeke. Zeke is about to leave the freaking building.
And
you have to pay back interest from all those years because you've kept all that extra money. All right. So that's a big chunk of it. That's about a fourth of all of this. Another ginormous example here is this Ferry Point loan and deal. So what happened was about 15 years ago, New York City, they had this piece of property and they went out to the public and they said, we want to renovate this piece of land in New York, make it into a golf course, do some really cool things with it. And then they put it out for bid, meaning like who could renovate this? Who could start turning this part of New York into a golf course, into like a recreational area, things like that. Donald Trump applied for that and some other people applied for that. Donald Trump got it. And now, and this is through the city of New York. Now the judge is saying, well, the New York had these parameters to get this. Somebody had to be a personal guarantor, and Donald Trump was a personal guarantor. So when he did this whole deal, and then he went and got the lease agreement through the city of New York and everything, he put his personal assets on the line. So he was a personal guarantor. But the city wanted whoever was going to be a personal guarantor, they had to have assets, let's say, of $100 million. And I'm like rounding off some of these numbers just to make this go a little bit faster, darn it. But in reality, the assets you had were not as worth as much as you said it was worth to the city of New York. Now, and then later, I have to like walk you through this. After 13 years of operating this, because he had a long decades worth lease, he ended up selling this business venture, and he made a profit of $60 million. He sold it to Bally's, that casino and recreational, whatever, Bally's, like a Vegas. So he sold it to them and he made $60 million. So the court is saying, well, had you truly represented what your values were back then you wouldn't have gotten this deal. Somebody else would have gotten this deal. And because of that, you have to give back that $60 million. Okay? To the city of New York, no, because the city's not suing him. The city made a lot of money on this deal. It's to the state of New York. All right? How does that make sense? Well, you tell me. So in essence, then he's saying, well, you duped the city of New York, and because you dupe them, you have to give back all these profits. And the city did its due diligence. They researched all this. They agreed with Donald Trump's. Some of how this kind of works is, so Donald Trump has his own personal residence, and he said, oh, my residence is worth, $300 million. It's this many square feet. It's got this, it's got a pool table, whatever, right? And then the court comes back and says, well, it wasn't that big. The penthouse. Mateo, they're talking about the property, all right, bro? It's not that big, okay? And, but it's really, lawyers are funny. We calculate square footage very differently. Like what would you say the square foot of this big conference room is? Let's say it's 20 by 20, okay? That's 400, right? But sometimes lawyers do something funny, like, oh yeah, we built a deck here, or we built a balcony, and we're gonna calculate that square footage, or we added a room right here. This wasn't big enough to do that, but let's just say it was. We added a whole, not a room, a level here, right? And so therefore, that's another 400 square feet that we added. So there's always like differences in that. But remember, when he listed all these assets, New York City, they appraised it themselves. Do you see what I'm saying? They looked at it themselves. So the court is going back and saying, well, because of that, you wouldn't have gotten this whole thing. And you wouldn't have made all of that extra money. And therefore, you have to pay back $60 million. Okay. The next order of business here. There was a loan on a piece of property that Donald Trump had in New York City. The address was 40 Wall Street. So when he bought the property, he and when he refinanced it and did different financial transactions there, once again, it's the same kind of concept. He borrows money, and the court said that he defrauded these banks, because when he was borrowing and refinancing on this property, now this is a ginormous building in New York. And at one point, the court said that he said in a deposition or in testimony at one point, yeah, it was 73 or 72 floors, but in reality, it was only 63. I mean, people get some things like that wrong, potentially. But nonetheless, when he's borrowing this money from these ginormous banks, on this piece of property of 63 floors in Wall Street, New York City. It's not like he tells them, okay, it's worth $400 million. I want to get a loan so that I could, renovate it, and I could redo this, and I could put new businesses in this and do things like that. And then this court is coming back and saying, well, no, it was only worth $300 million, not $400 million, for example. What I don't understand is, what's it to you, court, right? Donald Trump said it's worth $400 million. The banks that are worth billions of dollars lent him that money and agreed on the valuation. Now the court is coming back and saying he should have valuated it a little differently. And had he done that, the interest rate would have been 10% instead of 7%, and a loan of hundreds of millions of dollars. And we need to disgorge another $40 million of your profits for that. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the whole case. This is how they're crippling financially our former president. Again, I don't like him. I don't dislike him. I don't care. I'm just saying this is the state of New York crippling a former president who was the front runner in the Republican Party over this. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is just shocking to me. Now, I have to focus something very important here about Deutsche Bank. Because this is the big ones here. Because Deutsche Bank is the one that they lent Donald Trump money for, like this golf course thing. They lent him money on on his asset, his Trump Towers in Chicago. They were the ones that lent money to that, the old post office where the court is saying, oh my goodness gracious, you victimized and took advantage of Deutsche Bank, right? And because you took advantage of Deutsche Bank, we're going to make you pay back hundreds of millions of dollars, not to Deutsche Bank, but to us, the state of New York. I have to go over this. I don't have a choice but to go over this. Deutsche Bank has been around since longer than the country of Germany. Right? I mean, not that much longer. Present-day Germany, about 1871, after the Prussian Wars kind of, became Germany, right? Before that, it was different Austrian empires, different Austrian kingdoms, different Prussian countries. And so it wasn't until after these Franco-Prussian wars and the Austrian wars, things like that, then they became Germany, okay? Kaiser Wilhelm. Zeke was old enough to remember when Germany became a country. Zeke, you were there.
Hurt his feelings, man.
I know. Zeke. The crazy part is Zeke is younger than me, but I gotta bust his chops, okay? All right. By the way, speaking of, man, I don't know what to do about my hair. What do I do? Do I shave this off, Zeke? Zeke went. I gotta shave it off, man. I thought I gotta shave it off. Is that what you're saying?
You can get away with it.
Shave it. I know. You know what made me. You know what made me think of this is the other day I took a shower and I said, "What do I do? Do I shampoo my head or do I just soap it at this point?" Right? It's like, because if I shampoo my head, do I just shampoo my arms? Like, what the heck, dude? What am I doing? At that point, I'm like, I think I gotta just shave it off.
I use shampoo.
You don't have any hair. What do you use shampoo for?
I don't know. You're supposed to put it on your head.
Oh my God. All right. So anyway, can we please get back to business, Mateo? Is that all right? Can we be in charge here for a while and just get back to business? Okay. All right. All right. So look, Deutsche Bank, so they've been around for a long time. And it's pretty cool. I love researching this bank and kind of explaining the history. So it was 1870. So before Germany became a country, but not by a lot more, they started lending money to different companies and to the government. The government was coming and borrowing money from Deutsche Bank. And even at one point, this was like crazy at the time, they started building a railroad. They financed and started building a railroad from Berlin to Baghdad, Iraq. All right, my hometown. That's where I was born, Baghdad, Iraq. So it was called the Baghdad Railway. So they wanted to connect all of Europe, into Turkey and into Iraq, all the way down. And then they eventually got this to all the way down to the Persian Gulf. And this was all financed by Deutsche Bank in like the 1800s, or the early 1900s. So we're talking about a very sophisticated bank here. I mean, this is what the court is saying. You took advantage of these people, of this Deutsche Bank. They were so big that they played a very big role in World War I and World War II. And to the point where it was this bank that when Hitler came to power, the Nazis came to power, the bank kicked out all the Jewish leaders of the bank. And then as Germany started invading other countries, this bank started taking over the other banks. Like they took over the Austrian bank. They took over the Czechoslovakia banks. They took over the banks in Greece. They took over the banks in Belgium, Yugoslavia. I mean, this is a big freaking bank. Do you see what I'm saying? It was this bank that financed Auschwitz. I mean, that's a big deal, right? They financed the government to build it. Of course, when they built it at first, it wasn't going to be a concentration camp. It was going to be just this, like the military prison, things like that. So they built it. And I know this because there was this big lawsuit in the 1990s, and Deutsche Bank agreed to pay billions of dollars back to the Holocaust survivors in the 1990s because they financed all of this. So I think that saying that Donald Trump took advantage, that he outsmarted this bank, what do you think? I don't think that's possible, right? I mean, this bank, this is why I always tell people, Deutsche Bank, it's like if they do due diligence, that's because they're lazy that day. And it's only, they don't do due diligence, they do freaking crazy and diligence, right? So it's just crazy to me because this judge is saying that Donald Trump, when he went and borrowed money on the Chicago property, the property in Washington, D.C., when he went to Deutsche Bank and made all of these big loans, to do these loans, he was saying, oh, all my other assets, like, so if he's borrowing money on Trump Tower in Chicago, he, to get the loan, he has to say, this is what my other properties are worth. Just in case I default here, you can go after my other properties. And there was a little thing that they had in the contract with Deutsche Bank. This is how sophisticated Deutsche Bank is. It said you always have to have $2.5 billion of valuation in order to keep borrowing money from us at this high amounts at low interest rates. You have to have $2.5 billion of property. So he said, no problem. I got this penthouse in New York. I got this property in DC. I got this ginormous house in Florida. What's the house called? Mar-a-Lago, right? I got this ginormous house. My favorite part of this lawsuit is one time they were questioning him. I got to find this. It was so rad. They're questioning him about Mar-a-Lago. And they said, well, did you ever lie about the valuation of Mar-a-Lago? Donald Trump said, yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I did lie. What do you mean you lied? Yeah, I did notice that the valuation was way off. And Donald Trump said, we valued it a few $100 million, but really it's worth $1 billion, $1.5 billion. I love that part. So he said that to the judge. Yeah, you're right, judge. We effed up and we lied. It was worth a lot more, but I let it slide because I wanted to be, conservative about it. That was my favorite part of the lawsuit, I think. Here we go. So I have to stop and talk about Mar-a-Lago. This right here shows that the judge does not know what he's doing. And it goes like this. So the judge says, this is the part. What the judge says is, well, Donald, there's no way Donald Trump could have evaluated this property at, 300 million. So there's no way, for example, the judge is saying that Trump could have said that the Mar-a-Lago was worth $400 million because no home ever sold worth that much. And there was like very weird restrictive deeds on the home, things like that. So the judge says that there's no way that the valuation of Mar-a-Lago was, and I'm rounding off numbers here, $300 million. It was worth way less than that. And now the judge never really said exactly what Mar-a-Lago was worth at the time and exactly how he could back it up, because those valuations are very, very hard to do. You cannot it's like, what's the Mona Lisa worth? What is, you know what I'm saying? What's Van Gogh's Starry Night worth? I don't know. Nobody, even if you get 30 of the best art historians, they'll come up with 30 different valuations, because this is a very unique property. It would be like selling the Alamo. I don't know. Do we have any comps on the Alamo? Zeke is a big time. If you need any insurance services, we got Zeke. What would you insure the Alamo at? What do you think?
I need a replacement cost value.
A replacement cost value, right? So here we go. So the judge here never comes up with his own valuation. And then just coincidentally, there was a home in Florida, a lot smaller, like a third of the size or something of Mar-a-Lago, and it went for sale for $250 million. And it's not Mar-a-Lago. It's not this historic, place like Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago, you buy Mar-a-Lago, you get like our nuclear secrets with it, I think.
Whatever documents
right?
kept in the bathroom.
Yeah, I was excited when I moved into a house. There was like extra toilet paper that the previous residents left behind. I felt like I won the lottery. You buy a Mar-a-Lago, you get nuclear codes with it, right? And then all these other awesome documents, right? So the judge here he doesn't make a strong evaluation. And this is what the whole case rests on, because if Donald Trump was right that Mar-a-Lago is worth all these hundreds of millions of dollars, then all those loans that he got were fair. You with me? Everything he did was fair. If the judge is right, it's like, if the judge is right, then okay, then Mar-a-Lago was misvalued. But he has to get around the point that it was misvalued and to the, intentionally misvalued. Everyone with me? And this is so strange because once again, who is complaining here? Nobody that was involved in this deal is complaining. Is Deutsche Bank complaining? No, they made a lot of money. Ladder Bank, the one that did this deal with 40 Wall Street, New York City. No, they're not complaining because they made a sweet deal on this. So nobody is complaining about this except the state of New York. And what this opens up, and why I think the case will be reversed. One of the things the judge keeps saying is, well, Mar-a-Lago has these restrictive deeds, meaning they can't necessarily make a golf course or extend it to another golf course. They can't. It has to be a private residence at some points, or it can be a private residence at other points. Like, so there's all these restrictive deeds, and he keeps saying Donald Trump treats this like, he's valuating the property as if these deeds were not there. That is an interesting point, because sometimes, somebody will buy a piece of property knowing, oh, I could change this usage to make it a golf course, or I could change the usage to make it an amusement park or whatever. Right now, it's not allowed, but I think I can get that done. So how do you evaluate it? Do you evaluate it on what a potential buyer may be able to do with the property, or do you evaluate it on what it can be done today? All right, those are very interesting questions. The Joe Samo answer is very easy. If Trump evaluated it one way and Deutsche effing Bank evaluated it the same way, then I don't see any fraud. And if Donald Trump paid back those loans, which he did, I don't see any fraud. Okay, and if I do see any fraud, then it should be Deutsche Bank that sues him, not the state of New York, because now the state of New York is saying, we can go back to all the deals that have ever been done. And even the deals where people paid back the loans and everything was fine. And we could go back and retroactively, if there's something that we disagree with in terms of the accounting, we can come back and cripple that person. Let me just say, here's the damages. Okay, I did say some of them in terms of this hundreds of millions of dollars. In addition, the court ruled that Donald Trump cannot do business in New York for the next 3 years. That's crazy to me. Not that I live in New York. I'm here in California. Not that I want to do business with Donald Trump, but he can't do business there for the next few years. His sons can't do business there for the next couple of years. His accountant can never do business there for the rest of his life. All right. I think that's seems a little overboard. What I want to know is, how come Deutsche Bank can still do business in New York? What do you think? I mean, weren't they involved? I mean, if either they're involved in this fraud or they're so incompetent that they let hundreds of millions of dollars slide. You with me? Either way, why are they allowed to do business in the state of New York? Why is New York City allowed to do business in the state of New York? I mean, theoretically, New York City let him build these golf courses and get this loan. I'm sorry, the lease that he then sold later to Bally's and made $60 million. Theoretically, according to this judge, New York City got duped. They didn't do their due diligence. They didn't know what was going on. What I don't understand is when Joe Samo, like, if I have a credit card or I want to borrow $50 or something from a bank, it could be $50. I don't care what it is. They're just like, I swear to God, I get a call from the bank. Well, before we extend your credit, can you walk in your pantry and tell us how many cans of soup you got in there? We're figuring out what your assets are. Okay, bank, I got 21 cans of soup. Are any of them expired? Like they open up my you-know-what.
What I need is for you to climb down out of my ass.
Do you know what I'm saying? Every time. So banks, they know what they're doing, darn it. This judge must be thinking that banks just say, oh, okay, it's worth 400 million. Oh, okay, here's a check for 250 million. Is that how banks work? No, right? But according to the state of New York, now they can go back and just get all the business records and go back even when deals were perfectly done, even those, and they can go back. In my opinion, all right, I put it out there. Who wants to make a bet with me? We got to find an escrow company or a third party that will take this bet. But I'll bet that this has to be reversed on appeal. If not by the New York appellate court, then it has to go to a federal court. It has to be reversed. If it doesn't get reversed, I'm going to have even less confidence in the state of New York's judicial system. And I will say this: I don't give this judge Engoron any deference or any not even a little, because he didn't allow videotape in the courtroom, and that does not make any sense to me, because Donald Trump testified, all these accountants testified, and I think, Michael Cohen testified, Alan Weisselberg, the accountant who's disbarred or disaccounted, what's the right word? Dislicensed for his whole life, right? All these people testified, and we can't watch any of it, which was just crazy to me because we watched the the Johnny Depp trial we were allowed to watch. We were allowed to watch, anyway, whatever. I don't give them any deference. So because of that lack of transparency, there's no benefit of any doubt. I read this and I saw a lot of doubt. It's going to be reversed. I want to hear your opinion. See you next week.